It looked like every single thing about Michael Jackson had been looked into in great depth. One piece of the puzzle, however, stayed unknown for decades. The former Webster star and Michael's best friend, Emmanuel Lewis, finally broke his silence today, telling shocking truths that will chill you to your core. They are no longer just rumors or pieces of stories in the news. They are a straight account from a rare witness who lived with Michael during those difficult years. Doesn't talk about Michael as a legendary figure from a long time ago, but as a grown-up who was crushed by the cruel media and social bias. The pain, secrets, and tears that were never shed are now revealed in a way that is both scary and raw. At one point, no one saw this truth, but now they will. This moment will change how everyone sees Michael. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe before we go on this journey to find these hidden secrets. That way, you won't miss any of the shadows behind the spotlight. A lot of people think that everything is fine when the stage lights come on. A lot of attention, money, praise, and love. But there are shadows that you wouldn't expect behind that bright light. In these shadows, two people who didn't seem to be connected and who couldn't have been in the same picture found each other. Michael Jackson, who is beloved all over the world for his music, and Emmanuel Lewis, the little boy who made people laugh and cry on the comedy Webster. People were amazed by their relationship. It was like two stars from different skies had met in a moment of fate. Not their different ages, looks, or social classes that interested everyone, but also the way they were friends. Michael was an adult who had lived his whole life under the harsh scrutiny of the media. Emmanuel, on the other hand, was a small child star who was often looked down upon. But those LS went away when they were together. Lewis once said, when he was with Michael, he wasn't the different boy that everyone was looking at. Due to the huge amount of pressure, Michael also stopped being the king of pop. Somehow, two good people found each other in a world that was too cruel. People from the outside talked about it. Some called it strange, while others looked at it with prejudiced eyes. At that time, people did not accept differences. That time, a famous black man who was admired around the world decided to hang out with a little boy who was also famous. The public's suspicions were about to blow up. They forgot that Michael had never really been a kid. He wasn't able to play with his friends because he was pushed onto the stage and made to carry the hopes of his whole family. Also, they forgot that Lewis had to grow up under close supervision and was never seen as a normal kid, even though he was a famous child star. It was this empty space that brought them closer, making an odd, coordinated link. Lewis once said that Michael wasn't the cold star that the press made him out to be, but rather a real big kid. He liked to play video games, run in the park, and laugh at silly things that grown-ups normally wouldn't notice. A lot of people thought this was weird behavior, but Lewis saw it as a way to be free. Michael was like Walt Disney in real life. Michael made his own world to make up for the youth he lost, just like Disney did with Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and magical theme parks. Lewis lived in that world. But because of this link, both had to deal with a lot of criticism and suspicion. At that time, the news media wanted to make every little thing into a crime and every good deed into a big story. It was said that a lot of reporters followed them around, taking pictures of them in real life, and then making up weird stories about them to sell papers. Michael often felt sad and even tired because of this. That man, no matter how famous, had the right to seek innocence and play like a kid. That's what he couldn't underline. It was proof of a truth that not many people would dare to accept. Sometimes, only people who have had a youth stolen can really understand and comfort each other. This was the very thing that made people interested in, critical of, and even mean to them. But most of all, it was a pure, long-lasting, and uncommon friendship based on trust, understanding, and the desire to live as kids who were never shown how to grow up properly. People often picture bright stages, tens of thousands of screaming fans, and hypnotic dance moves when they think of Michael Jackson. This is not how Emmanuel Lewis sees or remembers it, though. A Michael Jackson who wasn't at the height of his fame, but whose normal life was full of extremes, both good and bad. Those memories are mostly linked to Neverland Ranch, which Michael turned into a fantasy land for kids to escape the harsh realities of life. Neverland was more than just a fancy home. Michael worked hard and with all his might to make his unfinished dream come true. Lewis says that the first time he went into Neverland, it was like stepping into a real-life picture. There was a merry-go-round, a Ferris wheel, and a small train that went around the huge property. There were also rooms with computer games. There was even a private movie theater where Michael would show old cartoon movies that he had seen a lot of times. Some people might think it's strange or even a way to escape reality. For Lewis, though, it was Michael's way of getting better. It was a long afternoon when Lewis and his friends played games on the Neverland grounds until they lost track of time. Michael was interested in every arcade game and pinball machine. It was like he was looking for pieces of his childhood that had been taken away by long practices and performances starting when he was 6 or 7 years old. Lewis says he was just a big kid. To him, wasn't the cold stage king, but just a grown-up kid who missed the easy things in life. Lewis remembers that Michael would sometimes take him for walks in the yard at night. They would look up at the stars and talk about their worries, which Lewis rarely told anyone else. Michael said he felt empty even though he had all the success a person could hope for because he had never been a normal kid. While other kids played on the grass, he was locked in a practice room and had to sing, dance, and be perfect in every way. While other kids his age had friends, he only had haters and viewers, and Neverland was his attempt to relive his youth, even though it was too late. The way the media talked about Neverland was the thing that scared Lewis the most. What they didn't see was the simplicity or the simple longing of a person. Instead, they painted Neverland as a sign of weirdness, making Michael a loner who was being chased. Lewis saw Michael's sadness many times as he read mean and offensive stories about the place he loved the most. It's possible that the media didn't want to understand. Lewis let out a sigh. Society used the fact that Michael tried to get back to his youth to keep him stuck in a false image. Lewis said Michael always had a small notebook with him where he wrote down ideas for Neverland, like how to add a new game or flower garden or how to build an ice skating rink. Not many people know this. He thought of Neverland as an unfinished piece of art. Whenever he had a new idea, he would tell Lewis with delight, his eyes shining like a kid showing off a new toy. Lewis thought that was the real at that time. Michael, not the famous person or the star, but a weak person trying to hold on to what little innocence he still had. But they were not innocent for long. Remembers when the news would swarm Neverland looking for any picture or story that could be used to make a scandal. Lewis said that Michael couldn't be himself because of other people. They did everything for fun, even making fun of his pain. That comment cut deeply into the pain of a whole generation of black artists like a knife. No matter how high they got, they were looked at more closely and had to show themselves more. During those years, Lewis lived through a terrible paradox. He was a musical genius who was admired by everyone but couldn't live a regular childhood without being judged. Even with all the rides, games, and fun, Neverland couldn't hide the fact that this world was too cruel for Michael's mind. Because of that contradiction, Lewis saw that their relationship wasn't just a pure bond, a stolen youth, being made into an icon before they could even grow up, and then being crushed by expectations and bias were also pains they shared. There are times in life when the stage lights are turned off and are replaced by the harsh flashes of cameras and shocking headlines on the front page. 1993 and 2003 were just that for Michael Jackson. The years of the famous King of Pop were over. Instead, they were a dark time when every smile and movement was closely watched, distorted, and turned into proof for the worst charges. Emmanuel Lewis remembers that time very well, and as he talks about it, his voice gets heavy. Michael was really hurting. These charges hurt Michael deeply because they hurt his love for children, for innocence, and for the kids he always wanted to make happy. Michael saw kids as more than just an audience. They were like the kids he never had as kids. But his love turned into a sharp blade that was aimed back at him. Lewis said it was like Walt Disney, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and magical theme parks were all made by a man who dreamed his whole life of a happy world. Disney was praised as a genius and a worldwide star. That being said, Michael was twisted by society, which turned his love for children and creating Neverland into something bad, giving him bad names. Michael was found guilty of wanting to build a kingdom based on his innocence. If Walt Disney could do that, why was Michael found guilty? When Lewis asked a question, it wasn't just for the public to answer. He also asked it about his friend's unfair situation. Lewis says that Michael was used by the media as a scapegoat. They wrote frightening headlines and stories that were broken up, but were still enough to scare people. He said that some families took advantage of that weakness by making up stories to get money or because lawyers and the public wanted them to. It was said by Lewis that Michael wasn't very angry. Instead, he pulled away in such pain that he forgot to speak. But the quiet itself was seen as an admission. Lewis said he was so sad that I would see Michael just sit there and look out the window for hours without saying a word. He would sometimes just ask me, "Why do they think that of me? What went wrong?" I had no idea what to say. Lewis said those words from the heart made him feel useless because they made the truth so clear to him. In spite of being a superstar, Michael had the soul of a kid, but the world wouldn't let him live that way. The conversation with Martin Bashir in 2003 is one of the events that Lewis talks about most. At first, Michael thought this was his chance to show everyone that Neverland wasn't a scary place, but just a dream from his youth. The outcome, however, was different. The video was edited in a way that was skewed, drawing attention to parts that were easy to get wrong. They jumped right on it, as if they were waiting for it. Lewis said that the press was always putting pressure on him, even while they were shooting, so he would say something bad about Michael. They wanted me to say yes to things I had never seen or heard before. I tried, but I failed. I knew Michael. I knew who he was. Lewis refused to say anything because he didn't want to betray his friend. Because of this, some news sites shunned him, but he didn't care. He said that real friends don't turn the shahs.